Thank you, folks. You spared some time from your busy schedule to listen to my story. Before starting, I would request you to subscribe me, as this is your own channel. And if you like my hard work, please don't forget to like and share this story with your loved ones. Let's start. Have you ever given your entire life to someone, only to discover that your love, your sacrifices, and your endless giving were nothing more than stepping stones to their betrayal? I'm a father, and I'm not perfect. But when I tell you that I pour my very soul, my blood, my sweat, and every last cent into raising my son, I mean it with every fiber of my being. And yet it was my son, the boy I carried on my shoulders, the boy whose every smile was my reason for breathing, who looked me in the eyes one Christmas and said, "Dad, I wasn't expecting you." That sentence changed everything. That was the moment I realized. Sometimes the deepest scars don't come from enemies, they come from family. From the time he was born, I made a vow. He would never know the hunger I knew. He would never wear second-hand shoes with holes in the soles like I did. He would walk in polished leather, in branded clothes, in the kind of luxury I could never even pronounce when I was his age. I worked nights, took extra shifts, built my own business from scratch just to make sure he had the best education. I paid for his national tours, his international trips, every camp, every club, every conference. While other fathers gave pocket money, I gave him opportunity. And when he found love, or what he thought was love, I even swallowed my pride and covered the expenses of her lavish dinners, her cocktails, her shopping bags, all sliding across my credit card as if I were paying a bill for my own daughter. Because when you're a father, you convince yourself that every sacrifice is worth it if it means your child will smile. But the smile I thought I was protecting was slowly twisting into something else. Because after marriage, things changed. My daughter-in-law, oh, she was beautiful, seductive, clever, but her eyes didn't shine with love. They glimmered with calculation. She walked into my house, and I swear, the very first time she sat at our dining table, I felt the shift. The way her gaze lingered on the walls, the furniture, the family portraits, and especially on me. Not with warmth, with hunger. Not for me as a person, but for what I owned. My home, my wealth, my business empire that took decades of sweat and sacrifice to build. She didn't want a family. She wanted a kingdom, and she wanted my son as her king. And slowly, she began to weave her web. She whispered poison into his ears. She told him he wasn't living enough, that he was too tied to his old man's values. She took my generous boy and made him into a party king. My once disciplined son, who used to call me at night to say, "Dad, I'll be home early," now disappeared into neon-lit clubs, into rooftop bars, into penthouses filled with strangers who only cared for money in his wallet, my money. She seduced him, not just with her body, but with the promise of endless pleasure. And I watched helpless as my boy, the boy I raised, slipped further and further away from me, from his mother, from his siblings, from the very values that made him who he was. And if you think betrayal is painful when it comes from a stranger, wait until you hear what my own son did to me on Christmas night, in front of my entire family. The change in my son was not sudden. It was slow, creeping like rust on steel. At first, it was little things. Missed dinners, shorter phone calls, a delayed response to my messages. I told myself, he's just busy adjusting to married life. I wanted to believe it. Every father wants to believe his son still carries him in his heart. But I was blind to the truth that his wife was pulling him further from us, one string at a time. Soon, the little things became bigger. He stopped bringing his wife to family gatherings. Or when he did, she would sit like a queen at the table, her phone in hand, hardly acknowledging my wife, her mother-in-law. She never called us Mom or Dad. She called us by our first names, like we were strangers. My other children noticed it, too. They whisper about how she looked at the house, how she sized up the business, how she never missed a detail when money was involved. And then my son began to change his tone with me. The boy who once said, "Dad, I want to be like you," now said, "Dad, you don't understand the new world." The boy who once came to me for advice now rolled his eyes when I spoke. When I asked him about his plans for the business, he smirked and said, "Don't worry, old man, I've got it handled." Old man. That's what I had become to him. Not his father, not his mentor, just old. Still I tried. God knows I tried. I funded his new ventures. I signed checks with trembling hands, hoping his investment, this one, would bring him back to me. But every dollar I gave only made him drift further. He started hosting parties. At first, small gatherings, then rooftop nights, then full-blown penthouse events that ran until sunrise. And yet not once did he invite his own family. I remember one night, driving by the city lights, when I saw his penthouse glowing like a beacon in the distance. Music spilling into the streets, laughter echoing, cars lined up outside. My son's kingdom, built on my back with my sweat, with my blood, and I wasn't even allowed inside. I asked him about it once. I said, "Son, why don't you invite us? Your mother would love to see your place." He didn't even look up from his phone. He just said, "Dad, you wouldn't fit in." For words, you wouldn't fit in. They cut deeper than any blade. But nothing prepared me for that Christmas night. Christmas has always been sacred in our family, a time for warmth, togetherness, forgiveness. Every year, no matter how busy life got, we sat under the same roof, exchanged gifts, sang songs, and thanked God for the blessings of family. I looked forward to it like a child looks forward to the morning sun. That year, I was sure he would come home. Surely, he wouldn't forget Christmas. Surely, he wouldn't break the tradition his mother cherished. We cooked his favorite meal, set his seat at the table. His siblings bought him gifts. We waited. Hours passed. He never came. Finally, I called him, my heart racing, my voice trembling with both hope and fear. He picked up. Music roared in the background. I could hear laughter, clinking glasses, the rhythm of a life I no longer recognized. "Son," I said, "we're waiting for you. The whole family's here. Come home." There was silence on the line. And then he said it. Words I will never forget until my last breath. "Dad, I wasn't expecting you for Christmas." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just rejection. As if I were a guest, uninvited, unwelcome, in the very life I had built for him. My wife cried at the table. His siblings sat in stunned silence. And me? I felt something inside me break. The kind of break you don't recover from. But that night, as I sat staring at his empty chair, I realized something. Love without respect is nothing. Sacrifice without gratitude is slavery. And I, for the first time in my life, decided I would no longer be a slave to my own son. That Christmas night was the end of something in me. For years, I had given, I had sacrificed. I told myself a father's job was to carry his son no matter how heavy the burden. But as I stared at the gifts under the tree, gifts my son would never open, I realized the burden wasn't mine anymore. He had thrown it away. And so, for the first time in my life, I stopped thinking like a father and started thinking like a man who had been betrayed. I built him. Every step of the way, I laid the stones he walked on. His school fees, his college tuition, his trips abroad, all of it carried my signature, my sweat, my bank account. I gave him the suits on his back, the car he drove, the business he bragged about to his friends. Nothing he had was truly his, not even the roof over his head. That penthouse, paid with my money. That business, built with my credit. That life, a life I had gifted him. And so, I thought if he could take me out of his Christmas, maybe it was time I took myself out of his empire. I began quietly, carefully. No anger, no shouting, no confrontation. Revenge doesn't scream, it whispers. First, the business. He had no idea how much of his company still depended on me. The loans were in my name. The supplier contracts had my guarantees. Without me, the deals would crumble like sand in the tide. So, I pulled one thread. Just one. I canceled the payment he was expecting. Suddenly, calls started coming in. Vendors asking for their money. My son, for the first time in years, picked up the phone to call me. Not out of love, but out of desperation. "Dad, did you forget to send transfer?" he asked, his voice strained. "No," I said calmly. I didn't forget. That silence on the line. Oh, how heavy it was. He realized in that moment that I was no longer his safety net. Next came the penthouse. The mortgage was still linked to my accounts. A detail he never cared to check, because why would he? Daddy always paid. But that month I didn't. The bank called. The payment was overdue. My son panicked. His wife panicked even more. I heard later that she screamed at him, asking how a man with such a wealthy father could let this happen. And that's when the cracks began to show between them. Because here's the truth. People who love you for your money will abandon you the moment the money disappears. I kept pulling strings. One by one, I dismantled the illusions he lived in. The credit cards he used to buy his wife's designer clothes, canceled. The staff who managed his business empire, gone, because I cut off their salaries. The investors who once trusted him walked away because I withdrew my name from the guarantees. And then came the Christmas party. Not ours, but his, the one he had so proudly hosted, where I wasn't welcome. He planned another one the following year. Same penthouse, same crowd, same expensive champagne, paid for by the father he thought was a fool. But this time, things were different. I received the invitation by accident, forwarded through a contact who still respected me. And as I read it, a thought crossed my mind. What if the lights went out on his little kingdom? What if, in front of all those people he tried so hard to impress, the truth came crashing down? So I waited. I let him plan. I let him brag. I let him send out invites to people who barely knew his name but loved his parties. I wanted him confident. I wanted him proud. I wanted him unprepared. And on the night of his grand Christmas gathering, when the music was blasting, when the glasses were clinking, when the laughter filled the air, I made my move. One phone call. That's all it took. To the bank, to the creditors, to the suppliers who were already circling like wolves. And within an hour, the penthouse that had once been his throne turned into his cage. The lights flickered. The music stopped. The staff left. Guests began whispering, looking around, wondering what had happened. And there he was, my son, standing in the middle of the chaos, his wife at his side, her face pale with fury as his entire kingdom collapsed around him. And for the first time, I didn't see my son as the man who betrayed me. I saw him as the boy he truly was, lost, ungrateful, and utterly unprepared for a world without his father's hand holding him up. The party was in ruins. Guests shuffled awkwardly toward the exits, murmuring rumors that spread faster than the scent of spilled champagne. Some laughed under their breath. Others whispered about bankruptcy, foreclosure, fraud. And there, in the middle of the living room that once glowed with lights and music, stood my son. The look on his face wasn't anger. It was fear. Pure, raw fear. His wife didn't try to comfort him. No, she stood a few steps away, arms crossed, her lips trembling, not from sorrow but from rage. Because when the money dried up, so did her affection. She had loved the parties, the clothes, the penthouse. But the man himself? Without the wealth, he was just a shell. And that's when I realized the revenge I had planned wasn't just about me. It was about exposing the truth. That wealth can buy attention, but it can never buy loyalty. In the weeks that followed, the collapse was swift. Creditors came knocking. The bank repossessed the penthouse. The business folded overnight. One by one, his so-called friends stopped answering his calls. The very people he threw me aside for, the ones he thought would replace his family, they vanished. And his wife, the final betrayal. One morning, she simply left. No note, no explanation, just an empty closet, and a divorce notice delivered to his lawyer. The same woman who had whispered poison into his ear, convincing him that his father was the enemy, was gone the moment she smelled the smoke of a sinking ship. I heard about all this not from him, but from others, mutual acquaintances, former employees, even a neighbor who saw him carrying boxes out of the penthouse when the bank finally locked the doors. He didn't come to me. He didn't call. Pride is a heavy chain, and he chose to wear it even as it dragged him down. But I'll admit something here, something I'll never say out loud. Watching his downfall, I felt two things, justice and sorrow. Because revenge, no matter how righteous, never tastes as sweet as you imagine. It's bitter. It leaves you with silence, not triumph. And the silence was the loudest on Christmas morning. That year, the tree in my house stood smaller, quieter. No expensive ornaments, no overflowing gifts, no crowd of guests. Just me and the faint ticking of the old clock on the wall. I sat there, staring at the lights, and wondered if I had gone too far. But then the doorbell rang. Slowly, I got up, not expecting anyone. When I opened the door, I saw him, my son. He looked thinner, older, stripped of the arrogance that once clung to him like perfume. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his eyes tired. He didn't speak at first. He just stood there, shifting from foot to foot, as if unsure whether I'd slammed the door in his face. Finally, he whispered, "Dad, I wasn't expecting you for Christmas, but I need you now." And in that moment, I understood something profound. Revenge had humbled him, broken him, forced him to face the weight of his choices. But it had also given me back what years of spoiling him had taken away. His respect. I didn't embrace him. I didn't smile. I simply stepped aside and said, "Come in." Because sometimes the coldest revenge is not shutting the door forever. It's making them walk back through it, stripped of pride, and finally willing to face the truth. Crux is, when people ask me if I regret what I did, I tell them this. My son said he wasn't expecting me for Christmas, but life has a way of teaching lessons, and this was mine to teach. Thank you, my friends, and please subscribe and press bell icon so that you can be informed for next heartwarming story. Stay connected and have a blessed time ahead.